Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar today. If you're joining us, we are here for the red flag alert, how to tell if you're selling on Stripe at a loss. We'll get started in just a few minutes as we're letting participants in. As you're entering the room, if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat where you're joining us from today, and then maybe let us know how long you've been using Stripe in your business. We'll get started here probably in about 2 or 3 minutes. We got someone from Columbus, Ohio. Mine in here too. So to everyone who's just now signing into the room, we are going to get started in about 2 minutes here with the red flag alert, how to tell if you're selling on Stripe at a loss. For now, let's just get things kicked off in the chat by saying where you're from. We've got someone joining us from Texas. And then if you can, just let us know how long you've been using Stripe in your business. Are you a new user? Have you been using it for several years? Love to know kind of who's joining and how long they've been using it. Welcome from Illinois. We've got, let's see. We've still got some people joining us, so we'll wait. Using for less than a year, okay. Good. Well, I think you're gonna get a lot of great tips today as we chat through those fees and knowing what to do when you use Stripe and how to get the most out of it. So let's see, we got a few more people that just joined us. So for those who didn't hear before, we're going to get started in just a couple minutes. For now, we're asking for participants to let us know where you're joining from in the chat. And if you can, let us know how long you've been using Stripe in your business. So we've got someone joining us from New York. Welcome. We'll just give it one more minute here and then we will kick off our discussion. I'm excited to introduce our guest today, and we'll get going on all things Stripe. So anyone else want to let us know how long you've been using Stripe in your business, or if you're not using it yet, let us know that too. If you're just exploring the idea, we'd love to know. So, all right, I think we can go ahead and get started. So just as a reminder, if you're joining us here today, you are here for the red flag alert, how to tell if you're selling on Stripe at a loss. And I'm really excited today to introduce to you our special guest, Anna Murphy with Murphy and Associates Consulting. Murphy and Associates Consulting supports financial professionals and service-based business owners in staying on top of their financial situation with outsourced bookkeeping services. Anna Murphy is the CEO and president and a finance professional with over 10 years of industry experience. Welcome, Anna. We are so glad to have you join us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. So my name is Anna Murphy. As Melissa mentioned, we own and operate a bookkeeping company where we help service-based professionals, specifically more in the digital space and the real estate space, on how to make sure they're keeping track of their business finances so that they can make sure they're filing taxes on time, they have organized documents, they're audit proofing their business against the IRS, and all that good stuff, right? That accounting lingo that I won't go into too much, but yeah, that's basically what we do.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. We're so excited to have you. Before we dive into our discussion, I just want to let everybody in attendance here know that at the end of today's webinar, we will be having a giveaway. You do have to be live on the webinar to be eligible for the giveaway. We will do it here on the webinar at the very end. So stick around to the end. You won't want to miss this. It's going to be a great giveaway, and we'll tell you more about it later. But diving back into our discussion, Anna, if you wouldn't mind, can you give us a brief overview of what it means to be selling at a loss and why it's important to identify that early?
Yeah, so selling at a loss basically means that your sales are coming in, but it's cost more to fulfill that than it is, making a profit. So for example, if you're selling a product or a service for $100, but it's taking you $120 to service that product or fulfill that product, then you're basically selling at a loss.
Okay, that makes sense. And sometimes I think new businesses maybe don't even quite realize that they are selling at a loss, some of those hidden fees and things that sneak in there, right?
That's yeah, it's a very common thing in the beginning because you're just starting the business. If you don't have like mentorship or guidance, or you don't have like an accountant or something like that who's going to help you to make sure that you're pricing things correctly, it's so easy to sell at a loss in the beginning.
That makes sense. Okay, interesting. So how can businesses accurately determine their profitability on Stripe? We'll move right into the Stripe stuff now.
Yeah, so with Stripe specifically, it has a lot of great features. It's actually one of my favorite POS systems that I recommend to business owners. And there's a couple of ways to do it. They have a lot of reporting features on there, so you can literally run a profitability report. It's typically called a revenue recognition report. So it allows you to be able to see, how profitable your products are or your services are. And then it accounts, obviously, the fees that you're paying Stripe to be able to, produce your product or service. So it's very robust.
Awesome. Okay. And then also, in line with that, what are some key indicators or maybe like red flags that you would notify clients about that would suggest they might be selling at a loss? Is there anything in that report that they might notice that could clue them in?
Yeah, so some obvious ones are like a lot of chargebacks. Sometimes especially like the digital online world, there may be, different reasons why you might get chargebacks, but chargebacks, customers asking for refunds, those are big red flags, right? So something's going on. Either you're in the wrong market, or you need to increase your prices, or there might be a variety of reasons. But with Stripe specifically, yeah, it's very common. So
Okay. So chargebacks. And then are there any other like key indicators maybe outside of Stripe that they just want to keep in mind as well?
So we do have to remember that Stripe is a business, and they are going to charge transaction fees and processing fees, right? I believe with Stripe it's like 2.9% of the total amount, plus like a 30% or 30-cent transaction fee for each transaction. So you have to make sure that you're incorporating those amounts into how you're pricing things. Another big mistake I see a lot of businesses do is that they don't have the proper integrations with their Stripe and their accounting software. So when they get paid and that Stripe transaction comes in their bank account, let's say they charge $100, Stripe takes, let's say, $5 to process that. They're only getting $95 in their bank account. But in their books, they're not accounting for that extra $5 that Stripe took before the deposit came in. So I see a lot of new businesses leave a lot of tax deductions from the fees on the table because their bookkeeping is not done correctly.
Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Are there any other like hidden costs or fees associated with using Stripe that businesses might overlook?
No, outside of just the transaction fees and the processing fees, that's pretty much it. There really aren't anything else outside of that.
Okay. Okay, great. And I just want to take a moment to let everyone know in the audience, we will have a dedicated time for Q&A at the end of this webinar, but feel free to send in your questions as they come up. If you look at your Zoom window down at the bottom, there is a Q&A. It's like a little conversation bubble with a question mark in it. Go ahead and put your questions there. It's easiest for us to see those in the Q&A rather than in the chat. And we will get to those at the end of the webinar. So just want to let everyone know that, and we'll get right back to it. So let's talk a little bit about like pricing strategy. How can a business ensure that their pricing strategy accounts for all costs, including those associated with Stripe?
That's a great question. I think pricing can be something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, right? Because it's sometimes difficult to understand, like, what is the market going to pay me for this product or service? Now, some of it is straightforward. You look at what your competitors are doing. But if you're like in consulting or like more like a professional type of field, me personally, I think you can be able to dictate your pricing based on the value that you provide for the business, right? So it does come down to knowing what your competition is doing, but also understanding that what the value is that you provide for that specific business owner. Niches are great because, if you've ever heard the saying, right, the riches are in the niches. I've truly seen that with a lot of my clients. They may start off doing something and then they find the niche and then they just dig in that niche and they like increase their sales substantially because they found, that the riches in the niches, right? So pricing is one of those tricky things, but for standard industry, I would say you want to look at the total price of what you're offering, and then you more than likely can add a 10% on that or a 5%. You have to figure out what percentage is comfortable, or what you're willing to charge for those extra processing fees that you're going to have to pay for. So that would be my recommendation, is figuring out what percentage to add on top of, okay, this is $1,000. We're going to add another 5% for the processing fees. You know what I mean? So something around that kind of concept or idea.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And when it comes to monitoring profitability, what specific reports or what data should businesses regularly review on Stripe in order to monitor that?
Yeah, that goes back to the revenue recognition report. You can also look at your payout reports. You can look at, the overall, like how many sales you've had in a certain quarter or a certain time frame. I also recommend that businesses look at the product or service that is producing the most income and figure out how to make that better, right? Because if people are constantly buying that one product from you, then that's your core product offer. And you can run a report in Stripe specifically for that core product offer. And the reporting in Stripe is very, very seamless. It's customer friendly. So pretty much anyone who's first starting out can kind of figure out how that works.
Okay, that's great to know. And what would you say are some of those like mistakes that businesses make? I mean, we talked a little bit about like some of the red flags that you could see in the beginning, but what would be like made mistakes that when they're assessing their sales and profitability in Stripe, are there any that you'd see coming up on a regular basis?
Just pricing is always one. And then making sure that they're identifying the different products and services within Stripe. So if they ever want to go back to see what's bringing in like the most income, they can run a report based on product or based on service. So sometimes when entrepreneurs are building their business in the beginning, they don't know which core product is, bringing them in the most income. Well, if you're using Stripe, it's very easy to do because you're going to name the product, XYZ, XYZ2, and you can run the report to see exactly where the money is coming from.
Okay. Okay, great. So that in a lot of ways would help manage costs, avoid selling at a loss if you can see those products in there. Are there any other steps that you would recommend businesses take to better manage those costs?
Well, I mean, having a third-party app like Cinder is going to be helpful, because Stripe doesn't have a direct integration with QuickBooks.
Okay.
And therefore, if you're looking at your profit and loss report in your accounting software, but you don't have it properly communicating everything that it needs to be communicated, your refunds, your chargebacks, and all that stuff, you're missing a lot of data. So having the proper integrations, for your bookkeeping is key as well. You're not going to be missing key information to help you.
Okay, that is a good point. So do you go and you don't have to company name or any identifying information, but do you have stories you can share, maybe a case study or two of businesses that identified that they were in fact selling at a loss and then turned it around?
Yeah, so I'll give you a recent one that we had in the last year. We work with a lot of digital businesses, so we have some large influencers on social media and stuff like that that sell a lot of digital products, but they also sell very high coaching premium offers, right? And when they first started, they were selling a lot of ebooks and a lot of the digital products. But when we looked at the numbers, they weren't selling as much as they would like, right? So he was able to kind of, the word tweak or adjust his ebook to be able to increase sales. So he changed the content a little bit around it, changed the marketing and how he was communicating, with the market. And he was able to increase his sales just by doing that. And we were able to look at the reports from the previous year to this year, and he like tripled his sales
Wow.
from doing that. So before it was like not making that much money. Really, it wasn't really a product that was generating much. He was actually thinking of just getting rid of it. And I guess one of his coaches told him, well, why don't you try to just pivot a little bit? And that little pivot just blew up his whole business on the digital side. So yeah, we've seen that happen a couple of times.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a really great story. Anybody here in the chat, if you have something similar that you'd want to share, please put it in the chat. We'd love to read your story about ways that you were able to maybe turn around something that was headed towards a loss and made it into something profitable. Let's talk a little bit about best practices now. What would you say are some best practices for regularly monitoring and analyzing sales data in Stripe?
Best practices. Well, you definitely want to keep your notifications on for things like chargebacks, refunds. Those are always the top two main flags, right? Or main red flags. Um, that suggests that there's again something wrong with the market that you're marketing to, or there's some adjustment that you need to make on your end, either sales wise or fulfillment wise. There's a reason why you're getting those chargebacks. um Outside of those two things, I don't think that there might be something like, again, the pricing, that might be a component to it. But other than that, if those two things are not consistent, as far as like you're not getting chargebacks and you're not getting refunds, then anything else is pretty would I say figure it outable. You can figure it out, right? It's figure it
Yeah.
outable.
Okay, that's awesome. And now this is kind of similar as far as like the monitoring and analyzing sales data, but how important would you say are just data analytics in identifying and preventing these sales at a loss?
Yeah, so if you're only using Stripe, with Stripe specifically, it'll tell you like how much you produced in this quarter versus last quarter. It'll tell you how much you produced this year versus last year, so you can compare. So like let's say you have a seasonal business, right? And let's say your high season is September through December. You can compare that September and December period to last year's and kind of see like, okay, I'm selling 20% less than what I did last year. Why is that? Is it, because the market, is not too good right now? Is it because I need to hire another salesperson? Is it because, you know what I mean? It allows you to be able to kind of identify where the problem is in your business. And sometimes it doesn't even have anything to do with you. It's just a part of being an entrepreneur. You know what I mean? So you kind of got to know like, when to take like responsibility and when to say, what, we're doing everything we can. There's really not much more we can do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, great. I just want to remind everyone we are going to have a time of Q&A at the end, so please put those questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom chat, and we will get to those at the end. Also, another reminder, we will be doing a giveaway at the end of this webinar. It will be for people who are attending live and on the call at the end, so please stick around for that. You don't want to miss out on that fun giveaway we'll be doing. So now let's talk about other tools and platforms that go along with Stripe. How can businesses integrate Stripe with other tools, other platforms to get a better understanding of their financial health?
Yeah, so that brings me to the conversation of using Cinder along with Stripe. Because if you're using more than one POS system, which POS means point of sale system, right? If you're using more than one POS system, say you're using Stripe and PayPal, Stripe and Amazon, Stripe and, whatever other POS systems are out there. Cinder allows you to basically bring all that data together in one place and then send it to your QuickBooks software, right? So I'm a big fan of QuickBooks just because when it comes to technology, it's probably one of the best. So it allows you to be able to integrate all that data into one source, and then it pushes all that information into your QuickBooks. So what information is it pushing? It's pushing invoices, sales receipts, refunds, chargebacks, fees, transaction processing fees, merchant account fees. These are all expenses that a business owner incurs when they're using these POS systems. So Cinder is definitely one of my favorites. Anytime we onboard a digital or our digital online business and they're using more than two POS systems, we always recommend Cinder to them. So that's one of our top ones. You said is there another one? There's a few other ones that, well, obviously QuickBooks for accounting, for bookkeeping. There's a few like Shoeboxed, if you want to be able to send out your receipts and get them categorized. They can do that for you if that's more of like the old school, our baby boomer kind of parents things where they keep the receipts in the boxes, right? And they just want to ship them out somewhere so they can digitize them. That's a possibility too. But those are pretty much the top three, I would say, that we're constantly using.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And for those live with us today, if you have other things that you're using in your business, other tools that are helpful, go ahead and post it in the chat. So let's talk a little bit about subscription-based businesses. They handle profitability a little bit differently, right? When it comes to using Stripe. Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, so with subscriptions, clearly you're getting a monthly reoccurring amount every single month. Um, which Stripe has the ability to do. You can create subscription transactions in there. So it every month it charges their card. Now with the subscription model, it definitely can be tricky because you need to have a core group of people who are purchasing this subscription, right? And typically in my experience, when you have just that business model, it's harder to scale, right? But if you have a combination of subscription based plus like a premium offer or something like that, it's easier to just run the business in regards to cash flow. But subscription based, you do have to look at how many members you have, times how much you're charging, times the fees that you're going to be paying for those subscriptions to be processed every month. And then you got to look to see if it's even profitable enough, right? I mean, there's so many different companies that do subscriptions that make billions of dollars, right? Netflix is one of them, Amazon Prime, like there's tons of them, right? But whether we use them every month or not, they're still getting their money.
Right.
Right. So subscription based does work, but you just have to make sure that you're factoring in those fees and how many people are going to be joining, because if it takes for you to, if it takes more money for you to run the subscriptions, then you're selling at a loss, right? You're not making any money. And that may be common in the beginning, especially the first, 1 to 2, 3, 4, even 5 years, I would say. There's a lot of businesses who don't make any profit within the first 5 to 7 years. I mean, that's very common in the entrepreneurial world. But again, it depends what industry you're in. And because I'm a bookkeeper, I see all the different industries. So it's kind of sometimes hard to answer questions, but hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. So as far as like subscription based, you said you can set those up through Stripe. Does Stripe charge additional fees for it being a subscription, or is it the same type of fee as any transaction? Do you know?
No, I believe they just charge every time that subscription is fulfilled, right?
Okay.
So every time it's fulfilled, they're gonna charge you for that.
Okay. Very cool. So now we've talked a lot about refunds, chargebacks. This is something that is just, it exists in the world. If you were selling products online or services, you're probably going to deal with this at some point. But
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit more about it. What can businesses do to mitigate the risks of these happening?
Well, I would say the first thing you want to do is get feedback from your customer,
Okay.
right?
Mm.
They're the ones that are buying it or refunding it. So they'll tell you, they'll tell you maybe not what you want to hear, but they'll tell you like this product sucked or whatever, right? Whatever the reason or their excuse is, you have to get that data from your customers because they're going to tell you why they don't want it, right? So pivoting from there and listening to your customers, I think is really important. Sometimes that's not even true. Sometimes it's just that you're in the wrong market
Mm.
and you're trying to sell things to people who probably can't afford it and they change their minds quickly and then they cancel and then they want their money back and then you see what I'm saying? So it's kind of tricky to tell, but it can be either of those two for sure.
Okay. And just so everyone on the call knows, so when we talk about refunds and chargebacks, do you mind just saying like what's the difference between like a processed refund and a processed chargeback?
Yeah, so a refund is when you agree to give the money back, right, to the client. You're refunding them and you're accepting the fact that they want a refund. A chargeback may mean that they didn't even tell you that they didn't like the product or whatever it is. And then they go to their bank and they say, cancel this, charge off this transaction. I don't want to pay for this. And then now the bank is sending you, you're having to pay the bank back the money because they charged back the transaction. So that's the difference between the two.
Okay. And does a chargeback cost a business more than a refund?
Yes, I think it does.
Okay.
I think it does.
Okay. Yeah. Just want to make sure everyone was clear that those are a little bit different, similar in that you are paying the customer back, but a little bit different way in which that's being processed.
Right.
Um, So you did talk a little bit about like a seasonal business, but how can businesses account for maybe seasonal trends? So maybe they're not necessarily a seasonal business, but they do have seasonal trends or fluctuations in sales. I'm sure a lot of like retailers probably sell a lot more during holiday seasons, or if you're making pool toys, you probably have more sales in the summer. So like how can businesses account for those types of fluctuations when they're analyzing their profitability?
Yeah, I would look at it on a quarterly basis. So how did quarter one do, quarter two, quarter three, quarter four? Obviously, if it's in your first year in your business, you're collecting that data right now. You're not going to know until your second year, right? But you want to go back and look at things from a quarterly perspective. This is why corporations have, quarter end and all that good stuff because they want to look at how things performed on a quarterly basis. So I would just go back, look at things on a quarterly basis, see what made the most money, see what made the least amount of money, and focus on the things that are bringing you the most income.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, great. So what actionable insights can businesses derive from Stripe's analytics to improve financial outcomes overall?
What actionable insights can businesses derive from Stripe's analytics? I would say um, everything is pretty much straightforward with Stripe. So if you wanted to go see and look, how much fees you've been paid or you've been paying, you can do that on a monthly, quarterly, yearly basis. Um, you can look at again all the chargebacks, the refunds. They have the reports based on what you want to look at in Stripe, so you can be very specific, even down to the product or service line item. So if you're only looking at your premium offers versus your digital or whatever it is, you can be able to hone in on how much that's generating for you. So the actionable insights are basically the reporting features in Stripe.
Okay, great. And I do have one more question that we're going to get to before we open things up for Q&A, but I just want to remind everyone that is joining us live, now's the time to put those questions in the Q&A. Please use there's a Q&A box down at the bottom of your Zoom screen. It looks like a conversation bubble with a question mark. Pop your questions in there. You can either, your name can be tied to it, or you can be anonymous if you would like. And just we're just about to jump to the Q&A portion. So I just wanted to remind everyone, and then of course stay till the end, because we do have that giveaway that we will be doing live here on the call at the end of the webinar. So to my last question before we get to the audience questions, do you have any expert tips for a new business? Like say they're brand new, they're just starting out with Stripe, getting all set up and started. What can they do to avoid selling at a loss and then having to identify those red flags later on?
Yes, very good question. Well, first of all, if you are a service-based business, that means that you're providing a service, right, for your customers. You want to take into account how much time it's going to take you to fulfill that versus how much you're making. So, for example, if you charge $5,000 to fulfill XYZ service, but it takes you 100 hours to do, you might want to you either want to double your price, or you want to figure out how to shrink that 100 hours to 40 hours, right? By using AI, using tools like Stripe, Cinder, all these different type of systems that can be able to help you save time. So Stripe has a lot of cool features. You can be able to automatically send out invoices to your clients, so you're not manually having to do that every month. You can be able to do the same thing with subscriptions. If you're going to be charging the client every month, I always recommend service-based businesses make that a part of their onboarding. Like, hey, XYZ client, we're going to create a reoccurring invoice in Stripe, and it's going to automatically charge your bank account on the, what do you want, the 1st or the 15th, right? So like that, you lead the conversation in getting those automatic payments coming in. So it eliminates you from having to do 5 other different processes, to make money. So yeah, that would be my highest recommendation, is to figure out how to systematize your processes by utilizing, systems like Stripe.
Okay, great. And then any tips for like maybe someone who's more like a e-com brand, something selling a actual physical product?
Yeah, so for the physical product, you want to look at the data to see how much your profitability is on selling X amount of products. So let's say you're selling planners, right? And you're selling them physically and they're $25 each. Do the math, right? If I sell 25 times 100, I'm going to make $2,500. But then you look to see it's going to take me $3,000 to fulfill it. Now you know you're selling at a loss. So you kind of have to do that math that sometimes drives entrepreneurs crazy, but it's a part of being an entrepreneur. So yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So it does not look like we have any questions that have come in. We have answered everything related to Stripe that you all have thought of. So that is great news. So I'd like to invite Lizzie to come on to help us with our giveaway. All right, so this is our wheel of names, and we will be randomly selecting somebody here who will win the grand prize for the webinar.
Nice.
And our winner is Ellen. So congratulations, you are the winner. We will be in touch with you to get all your details and chat with you about what you have won. So thank you everyone for joining us today on this webinar. Thank you so much, Anna, for being here, for the wealth of information that you have given to those who are live and those who will watch this webinar later. Any like last closing words that you want to say, or also if you want to put in the chat a way that people can reach you if they want to get in touch with you, that would be great as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I just just want to provide some encouragement. Entrepreneurship is very difficult. It's not easy, and so just want to provide some encouragement that if you're doing something and it's not working, pivot quickly. Find the community or the mentor, the coach, or whoever who can be able to help you make better decisions, and utilize the tools, right? Utilize the tools. We have so many tools at our fingertips these days with online. So there's systems that can help you, people that can help you. So just get back up, figure out a different way. It's okay to pivot. It's just a part of being an entrepreneur. So, and I'll put my email in the chat just so if anyone, is interested in learning a little bit more about us, or if you feel like we can be able to help you, we would love to be able to help. So
Awesome.
I'll put that in the chat now.
Great.
There we go.
See you there. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Anna. Thanks for joining us. Thank you to all of our attendees, and we will be back with more webinars in the future. So please watch our social media channels and your email to find out when to register for the next one. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.